Welcome back to my writer's room, everyone. I'm Matt Wallace, YouTube's resident angry writer, and welcome to day one of Hamshackle's Hangry Holiday Haymakers here on Angry Writer. So here's what we're doing. For 12 days, I'm going to be doing reviews / retrospectives of my favorite old action movies to help break up all that saccharine holiday programming that we're all endlessly subjected to over December. And I hope you'll come along with me, have a fun time looking back into the past. Because I feel like during the month of December in particular, during the holidays, as much as we chase that magical holiday feeling, there comes a point or several points where we kind of just want to either kick someone in the head or watch someone get kicked in the head. And this is a healthy outlet for that. It's a healthy outlet for your repressed holiday aggressions. So here's the deal. If I had one piece of advice for those aspiring to become a protagonist in a 1980s or 1990s martial arts action movie, it would be don't become a kickboxer. Don't choose that as a vocation if you're a protagonist in an 80s, 90s martial arts action movie, because it's going to end in tears no matter how it ends. Either you're going to get involved with a crooked promoter who wants you to throw a fight, and when you don't do it, you get thrust in the middle of a gang war, or you're going to fly to Thailand completely unprepared for how your watered-down Muay Thai matches against their sacred version of Muay Thai. You're going to get crippled, and your brother's going to have to swear vengeance. Or you might find yourself in this situation where you accidentally kill an opponent in the ring, and you are tortured by it for years. That is the premise of our first Hamshackle Holiday Haymaker, which is Bloodfist 2, starring none other than Don the Dragon Wilson. He was the best, but against an army of drugged up killers, will the best be enough? That's the immortal question posed by Bloodfist 2. If you're wondering why I'm holding a VHS cassette, or you're just, you're wondering what the hell a VHS cassette is, much like punk rock, I really feel like you don't want to watch Bloodfist 2, these kind of 80s, 90s action movies, on a cleaned up, scrubbed up DVD. Just the way you want to listen to punk rock on vinyl with all these scratching and texture that comes with that. You really want this kind of experience. It doesn't do well in HD when you clean this up. It's supposed to be dirty. So this is one that will forever remain in VHS for me. So Bloodfist 2, starring Don the Dragon Wilson. From the late 80s to about the mid-90s, there was no bigger B martial arts movie star than Don the Dragon Wilson. He was part of that rush of imports from the legitimate world of competition martial arts and kickboxing that flooded the entertainment industry when karate movies exploded in the 80s. And while he never reached the mainstream success of like a Van Damme or a Seagal or a Chuck Norris, he was always nipping at their heels all through the 90s. Don was always right there on that second tier beneath everyone. Carried mostly on the fact that Don Wilson is legitimately probably one of the single greatest kickboxers in the history of the sport. Legitimately. And a fantastic martial artist. The thing was, Don was also very different from the prototypical 80s, 90s action star in a few respects. The first being, he was sadly one of the few Asian American martial arts actors to transition and have big success in movies and in Hollywood. For the glut of martial arts movies that came out, it was always a white guy that tended to be fronting them. So he was unique in that respect. It was basically just him and like the Ree brothers, Philip Ree and Simon Ree. The other thing that always set Don apart for me was, while like Seagal had that like malevolence, and Van Damme had that like screaming, he'd obviously gotten really heavy into coke and like that big screaming, enthusiastic, like ass kicker thing. And Chuck Norris had that like squinty-eyed, dangerous Old West gunfighter thing. Don the Dragon Wilson really just had this kind of like dad energy. He was really like the 1980s sitcom dad of martial arts action stars. When, despite the fact that he was a total ass kicker, he's in all of these action movies beating the crap out of people and holding his own, and you totally believe he can do it because he was a legitimate martial artist. He just, like, when Don got mad in a movie, it never was like the rage of a Van Damme. It was always like you felt like he was disappointed in you. You felt like a dad, like maybe cool uncle disappointment. Because Don Wilson was and is actually a very straight-laced guy. And that always came across. He was always very earnest in his performances. That was like the level he reached as an action lead, was earnest. He could never really get past that. You never saw Don curse very much in his movies. He just, they would put him in these really prototypical action movie situations dealing with, warlords and, guerrilla armies and drug dealers and all these things and having him play these badasses. And he just always seemed like, he should be in like a really colorful sweater, kind of like giving people timeouts. That was the thing. It never felt like Don was out to kill or hurt anybody. He was like, he wanted to give you a timeout. It's just in his screwed up wiring, and a timeout to him was kicking you in the head. But it never felt malicious. It never felt malevolent. He never really had like a badass thing to him. He just had kind of this like really disappointed dad energy. But I love that about him. He was basically like Alan Thicke from Growing Pains if he was a martial arts action star. Not to mention, Don and Alan Thicke both had that like amazing coif of like fiberglass Dick Clark hair that never moved. Anyway, and so that was Don the Dragon Wilson. And there was no bigger flagship franchise for Don the Dragon Wilson at the peak of his career than Bloodfist. Between 1989 and 1986, Don the Dragon Wilson made 8 Bloodfist movies. 8 of them. And like past the second one, he never played the same character in any of them. They had no continuity. They had nothing to do with each other. They made 8 of these things. They were completely unrelated. It was like the producers and the financiers just realized we've got an awesome action movie title, Bloodfist, which for the 80s, 90s, that's, that is like the definitive bordering on a parody of itself action movie title. And we've got Don the Dragon Wilson, who people want to come see be the disappointed dad kicking people in the face. Whatever script we get, we'll just fold it in. It doesn't matter. Just go get a bunch of martial arts action scripts. We'll slap the Bloodfist brand on them, and we'll send them out there. Literally 8 movies. He played the same character in 2 of them, the first 2. After that, they had nothing to do with each other. But for my money, Bloodfist 2 is the best of the franchise. At least it's my favorite. So here's Bloodfist 2. Don the Dragon Wilson, former world kickboxing champion, plays Jake the Dragon Ray, current kickboxing world champion. Because Don really wanted to kind of like stretch as a thespian in this one. So Don the Dragon Wilson plays Jake the Dragon Ray. As the movie opens, Jake is defending his world title against Mickey Sheehan, which I believe is Celtic, translates to white guy in a professional fight in a movie. And they were always Irish. That's like an old cliche. But anyway, so Don's fighting this guy, just beating the crap out of him, and his opponent won't go down because unbeknownst to Jake the Dragon Ray, played by Don the Dragon Wilson, his opponent has been drugged. He's been snorting some kind of uppers that are keeping him on his feet. And Don doesn't know that. So he's like, why won't he go down? I'm beating the crap out of him. I don't want to seriously hurt him. But the guy just won't go down. So at some point in the fight, the guy's out on his feet, but he won't go down. The crowd is chanting for blood. And the extras they got to play the crowd, when they went to the close-up of several of them, like screaming, kill him, kick him, finish it. They are just like, they're trying to win Oscars in those moments, man. Those are some of my favorite crowd shots in any movie ever. So the crowd's egging him on, his corner's egging him on, his corner man, Vinny Petrillo, played by World Championship kickboxer Maurice Smith, is egging him on, and Don succumbs to the moment. He launches a kick at the guy, ends up kicking him in the throat, and he kills his opponent. Not meaning to, but just caught up in the moment, kills his opponent. And wins the fight and retains his title. But he's so tortured by what he's done. Don is so tortured that when they interview him right after the fight, they come up to him like, Don, Jake. Jake, who's totally different from Don. What are you going to do now that you retain your title? What's next for Jake the Dragon Ray? And Jake tells them, I'll tell you what's next for me. I'm never going to fight again. And he grabs the title belt and he literally yells, never! And he throws it into the crowd. And he walks away from professional kickboxing, tortured by this horrible thing he's done. That was like the Oscar clip moment from Bloodfist 2, was Don the Dragon Wilson yelling never and tossing a championship belt into the crowd. Flash forward a couple of years later, Don wakes up next to a lady of ill repute, which is how you know he's hit rock bottom, because sex workers in 80s, 90s movies were never presented as a valid trade. You know, it was always a sign that you were doing something wrong. And you know he's gone bad because not only is he with a lady of ill repute, but he has a 5 o'clock shadow, which for Don the Dragon Wilson to not be impeccably groomed in a movie, you know he'd bottomed out. So he wakes up next to this poor actress who's only there because it's, again, this is a late 80s, early 90s action movie. We've got to get some nudity into it. And this is the only nudity in the movie. But this was, she wakes up, she's nude. And Don is obviously disgusted with himself because, again, 80s, 90s movies, sex worker equaled shame. Jake gets a call from Vinny, from his corner man, Maurice Smith, World Championship Kickboxer Maurice Smith. And Vinny tells him, Jake, man, I'm in Thailand. I'm in trouble. I've gone afoul of this big-time gambler, quasi-mob boss named Sue. I need you to come to Thailand and help me. And Jake is obviously, you know, caught off guard by this and doesn't know what to do. But Vinny's his longtime friend. And even though Vinny has neither specified what sort of trouble he's in or what kind of help he needs, Jake is like, okay, I will come to Manila and I will help you, Maurice Smith. So that's what he does. Don saddles up, flies to Manila. Shenanigans ensue. He ends up finding out that Vinny and a bunch of other world-class fighters have congregated in Manila for some kind of vague, mysterious tournament that's being sponsored by Sue, this villain. Seriously? So I had to go stop the shrill harpy's cry of my dryer buzzer. I'm sorry about that. But you have just witnessed history. That was the first time I've ever edited a video on this channel. So we're already making history with Hamshackle's Hangry Holiday Haymakers. Anyway, Jake travels to Manila, meets up with a bunch of other world-class fighters that have assembled there for some mysterious tournament being run by this man Sue. And before Don knows it, before Jake the Dragon Ray knows it, he's been drugged, knocked out, kidnapped, and wakes up on Sue's private island that is totally not at all a setup like Enter the Dragon. Totally different from that. But what Jake discovers, what all the fighters who have been assembled there discover, is that Sue has created, via a hired ex-Nazi scientist, a super soldier serum to turn regular bodybuilders, Filipino bodybuilders, which is what his army is comprised of, into invincible, unbeatable fighters. And he's brought all of these other world-class fighters, including Don the Dragon Wilson, to Manila to Shanghai them, to force them to compete against his souped-up super soldier army in front of a bunch of rich investors, a bunch of fellow gamblers, you know, to show them, I've made this awesome serum that can make a fighter invincible, and if you invest in my serum, you'll never lose a fight again. It's a new way to fix an illegal underground martial arts fight. That's Sue's master plan. So he's brought all these fighters here to demonstrate the superiority of his super soldier serum. And what's cool about it, and this is where the movie really comes alive and why it's my favorite Bloodfist movie, is he's assembled legitimate martial artists from a lot of different disciplines. He's got Shotokan karate, he's got taekwondo, judo, boxing, Greco-Roman wrestling. They got all these legit martial artists to play the part of these world-class fighters who Sue pits against his souped-up super soldier fighters. And that's exactly what happens. So they're forced to fight to the death against Sue's souped-up super soldier fighters. Jake eventually breaks free and then is recaptured and forced into the pit. And of course, they, there are fatalities, but they eventually overcome Sue's super soldiers, proving the superiority of pure, non-drug taking martial artists, which I guess is the thesis and moral of the film. And then they fight their way off of Sue's private island. And it's the action is just first-rate, absolutely first-rate fights. I love tournament movies. That's always been one of my favorite subgenres of martial arts movies. So that's where this one really kind of clinches it for me in terms of the Bloodfist series. So Let's do a few fun categories here. Let's do the quote of the movie. And there's, you see Hamshackle breaking a little board there. I actually like that a lot. I feel like I did a good job on that. Quote of the movie. So you have to visualize this scenario. Don the Dragon Wilson has just defeated one of Sue's super soldiers, proving that they are not superior to natural fighters. He's found out that his best friend Vinny, who lured him to Manila, was working for Sue the whole time. He's been betrayed by Vinny. Vinny himself is on the super soldier serum that Sue has developed. So Sue, of course, angry that Don the Dragon Wilson has disproven this new $1 billion investment of his, he orders Vinny into the ring to take on Don the Dragon Wilson in one-on-one combat and defeat him. So that's what Vinny does. Takes off his vest because he's wearing a vest with no shirt under it because it was 1990. Dives in the ring. He's facing off against Don the Dragon Wilson. Don the Dragon Wilson is face-to-face with his former best friend who's betrayed him and lured him to this lethal gladiatorial combat against these super soldiers. And Don the Dragon Wilson tells Vinny, Vinny, what are you doing? When you fight on drugs, you don't win anything. That is a verbatim quote. Ladies and gentlemen, that is what... Don, do you even know where you are right now, man? Like, sincerely, he's in this fighting pit. He's just defeated this guy who's on this Nazi scientist-developed super soldier serum. His best friend is souped up on it too, trying to kill him. And he tells his friend, when you fight on drugs, you don't win anything. Again, Don the Dragon Wilson, the 80s sitcom dad of martial arts action stars. It's like he just found Kirk Cameron experimenting with steroids before the big track meet. It's so incredibly ridiculous for the scenario. But that's one of the reasons I love the movie. The fighting is great and everything else is terrible. Which brings us to TNT, Tropes and Triggers of Bloodfist 2. We've got, they can fight, but they can't act. So the entire cast of the movie is propagated by legitimate martial artists, karate champions, taekwondo champions, none of whom are professional actors. So much so that during the opening titles, when they introduce everybody's name, they list their legitimate martial arts credentials under their name in the title credits. I shit you not. Every actor in the movie that they introduced in the opening titles has their championships in martial arts listed beneath their name. So they can fight. They're great fighters. The fighting is fantastic. The acting is atrocious. It's really like, it's like that prototypical 80s, 90s bad B martial arts movie acting, spearheaded by Don the Dragon Wilson's hyper earnest, disappointed dad kind of acting energy. So we've got that. We've also got all Germans are basically Nazis. So Richard Marius, the actor, plays Dieter, the clearly ex-Nazi scientist who has developed Sue's super soldier serum for him. And Dieter is basically like every Jack Kirby caricature of a Nazi from like the 30s and 40s. He's like a living, really, really offensively, stereotypically Nazi German caricature brought to life. And that was very prevalent in the genre throughout the 80s and 90s. So if you're a German person watching this, you may not appreciate that portrayal, especially since, you know, it's a movie set in the 90s, so the guy legitimately shouldn't be old enough to be an ex-Nazi. Be that as it may. What else do we have? We have... no, really. He's a villain. This is a trope. This is like one of my pet peeves as a trope. It's when the villain proves how villainous they are by killing one of their own men for screwing up. You see that over and over again. You still see it in movies today. But yeah, they have Sue. One of his men takes the ankle chains off the fighters because he's worried about them getting hurt when he herds them off the boat that they've all been brought over to the island on. And Sue, like, stabs them to death. You know, and the thing is, he's already drugged these people, put them in leg and ankle chains, abducted them, and brought them to a private island to make them fight to the death. I get it, bad guy. You sold me. You totally sold me. You didn't need to take it. You didn't need to take it to that place to really get the point across. But That's like one of my least favorite villain tropes, even in really bad movies. Finally, we have violence against women. There's a brief scene. Rena Reyes, who plays the lead woman role in the movie, she plays Mariella, who's like Sue's ward. He took her off the street and has raised her, and she's the one who suckers Don the Dragon Wilson in and kind of betrays him and leads to him getting abducted and taken to the island. Sue punishes her for showing sympathy towards the fighters by having Maurice Smith, Vinny, the guy the Don the Dragon Wilson's best friend in the movie, whip her repeatedly. And it's not a graphic scene. It's not a terribly long scene, but it's still, if that could definitely be, I could see that being triggering to several people. Honestly, though, beyond that, the representation of Mariella as a character is actually really good in this movie. Like, especially good for 80s, 90s action movies. Rena Reyes has her own arc in the movie. She's also, that scene aside, she's also an ass kicker. She's a talented martial artist in her own right, so she's beating the crap out of everybody. She joins in the final assault on Sue's Island with the rest of the fighters, and she actually rescues Don the Dragon Wilson and not the other way around. And she has agency. You know, she has to deal with realizing Sue is not the person she thought he was, and then she finds out he's actually her father. Spoiler alert. And she just comes to terms with that and make decisions and be proactive. So for a woman's role in a 1980s 90s action movie, it's fairly well done. I thought. So beyond that, but that is a triggering scene in there. So those are your tropes and triggers. Overall, Hamshackle gives Bloodfist 2 an 8.5 out of 10, and I've drawn Hamshackle as a pirate there. I don't know why. I just occurred to me I hadn't done it yet. But yeah, that's an old favorite of mine. My favorite of the Bloodfist series starring Don the Dragon Wilson. Don may pop up again in Hamshackle's, in 12 Days of Hamshackle's Holiday Haymakers. You never know. He made like 100 movies in 10 years. And I've seen all of them. I don't know why. But yeah, so that was Bloodfist 2. That was the first day of Hamshackle's Holiday Haymakers. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back tomorrow with day 2 and another beloved B-action movie from my childhood. Until then, I'm Matt F. Wallace, and I will see you for day 2.